Okay, hi everyone. Here I'm going to look at round 3 from the Cleveland Open. And yeah, after losing in the last round to this talented young expert, here I'm playing another talented young expert. I think he is, I think my opponent is in the top 100 for 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, 21-21, and definitely no easy games this tournament. But I was happy to see his first move e4, because that means I could play my Caro-Kann again. I think this is probably my favorite opening to play, like, out of all of my white and black repertoire. I have the most fun playing the Caro-Kann, which has got very interesting positions usually. And so it's actually been to such an extent that with white I considered playing c3 on move 1 to try and play some kind of Caro-Kann with an extra tempo, or even like c3, d3, and then d4. Which, I mean, it sounds silly, but actually some GMs have done this, like, I think, yeah, there's a GM that I've actually played. I played him, he didn't do this against me, but I've seen him play it. But Yaroslav Zherabuk, he plays the Caro-Kann, like, religiously with black. And he's actually played c3 on move 1 against Grandmasters. Just wanting to play a Caro-Kann kind of opening with colors reversed with an extra tempo. So, it's not the stupidest idea ever. But, okay, yeah, this game, we just got to play normal Caro-Kann. And yeah, here my opponent chose the classical variation, and yeah, instead of the normal bishop f5, I prefer this move knight f6. It's kind of the modern, trendy way of playing. And yeah, he went into the main line, so I took an f6. Yeah, black's whole point here is to take with the e-pawn. It's considered more dubious to take with the g-pawn. That's kind of it. Used to be more in style a long time ago, like the days of Bronstein and Larsen. So that's why this is named Bronstein-Larsen variation. But yeah, this is actually a more modern way of playing it, and it's either called the Korchnoi structure or the Tartakower variation. It's one of those two. But yeah, basically, it looks like white has this nice, it looks like white should have an easy game with this queenside pawn majority. And just, it's kind of similar to a Ruy Lopez, where if we trade off everything and get to a king pawn endgame, obviously white will be probably winning, because he can make a passed pawn on the queenside and black cannot. But yeah, the reality is that there's a long way to go until that happens. There's still queens on the board. There's still, we've only exchanged off one set of knights. So black's kind of free, easy development. The bishop can d6, the king can castle. The central files are open. Actually means black gets a lot of chances for activity in this line. So he plays the main way. He plays c3. He wants to put the bishop on d3 without letting the d-pawn hang. So yeah, bishop d6, this is all normal. Bishop d3, knight castled, knight e2, rook e8. And yeah, here usually white plays queen c2 to force black into a decision on this h7 pawn. We don't want to play g6 here, because then h4 and h5 becomes a pretty strong attack. But believe it or not, actually black plays h5 here, and yeah, I've had this position before, and I'm sure I'll have it many times again, where if white does continue castling, this pawn actually goes up to h4, and we can actually create a lot of pressure on the king side like this. Like, usually white does not want to allow this pawn to get to h3, so he'll play h3. But now this diagonal has been weakened. A lot of times black can even play bishop c7, queen d6, and combined with g5 to just set up a super battery over here. There can also be sacrifices on h3. Like, it's not uncommon to see bishop e6, then queen c8, just try to sacrifice on h3. So, meanwhile, white is going to be trying to make some kind of progress over here on the king side, or on the queen side. Play c4, either d5 or c5, and then black will be countering that with threats on the king side. So that's the main way of playing this. Yeah, basically the main line. And white can also castle queen side, which actually is even sharper, because then we get opposite sides castling. So, yeah, here he chose a little bit of a different way to play. He castled right away, which leaves me with the flexibility of keeping the pawn on h7. So, I mean, he could play queen c2 later, but for now, I actually like to play knight d7. So that if white does play queen c2, I can put the knight on f8, which is a maneuver that black wants to make anyway. This knight almost always plays knight d7, knight f8. Just from there, I can go to e6 or g6, and re-emerge later in the position. The position's kind of out of the way, it doesn't really belong anywhere else. But yeah, we can put the knight on f8 right away, and then we can wait and see, do we want to play h5 or not later, depending on what white does. So, alright, so yeah, this is all normal what he does. He plays knight g3. And here, you actually have to be a little bit careful with black. Like, a lot of people have made this mistake, just playing knight f8 in this position, which is actually already, it's a pretty serious error. That's because white has really two main ways of getting an advantage in this structure. He can either get this pawn to f5, or he can, achieve something on the queen side or in the center. Play c4, d5, or c4, c5, and then d5. Like, if he can do one of those two things, that's how white is going to be better. And actually after this, knight f8, yeah, that allows white to play f4. And there's no way to stop this pawn from getting to f5. So, like, play g6, white plays f5 anyway. And yeah, I looked at this a little bit during the game, because I was familiar with this idea, but not sure if it would work in this exact position. And yeah, here, like, black could try queen c7 with this attack on the knight, but white will actually sacrifice a pawn anyway. And yeah, I thought something like this during the game I did not want to go into, which the engine agrees with. The engine thinks white has a large advantage here, even down a pawn. The bishops are very strong, this queen is out of play, this pawn on f5 restricts all of my minor pieces. So yeah, this is just a great position for white. So that's why here the correct move is g6, which it not only just stops this knight from getting out, it also stops the queen from getting out here. But now, if white does play f4, this move makes no sense anymore, because now black plays f5. Basically, white has given away the e4 square for free. So f4 only makes sense for white if he's guaranteed to get f5 in. Otherwise, it's just a weakening move. So, alright, so yeah. After g6, he plays queen f3. And, yeah, now I play knight f8. So, continue with my mover. And, yeah, it's good to point out here, like, a typical attacking move that a lot of people like to make here is knight e4, but actually this bishop just comes back to e7. And later, black is going to play f5, this knight will have to retreat anyway, and white doesn't really accomplish all that much here. Like, even now, if you put the bishop on f4, you're not doing anything on this diagonal, and I can play knight e6, or f5 first, and then knight e6. It's actually really important that this queen is stayed on d8, and not like ventured out over here too early, because, yeah, in case of f5, we control the g5 score still. So if this queen was like already on d6 or a5 or whatever, then white could play knight g5 here, which would be a little bit annoying. But yeah, like this, then I just have to retreat, and then black's pieces uncoil with d6. So yeah, my opponent didn't do that. He played bishop f4 instead, and I decided to take on f4 rather quickly, which, it's not really a mistake per se, but it's kind of more accurate, you could say, to just keep the tension in the position. Play f5, which restricts this knight, and we let white exchange on our own terms. So it's not really a big deal, but yeah, probably if I was thinking a little bit more, I would have just played f5. So okay, now here, yeah, knight e6, we get basically the same position, like queen f3, f5, except my queen has not arrived on d6. So yeah, at this point black is pretty much equalized. Like, even though it looks like actually trading off pieces, we would think that would help white's chances, because every step we get closer to an endgame, it's going to be, apparently better for these pawns to advance. But actually, yeah, even though we traded off another set of minor pieces, even though there's no attack against white's king, it's still actually very difficult for white to make progress here. It looks like he even has a good bishop, because this bishop, which is passive on c8, can only go to d7. But there's more to it than that. Like, this knight on g3 is frequently a very bad piece for white, and even if it goes to e2, this queen has a very natural square on d6, where together with this knight, just takes away the f4 square. And it's actually it's hard for white to advance the queenside pawns without making weaknesses. Like, if you play c4, you have to make sure d4 is very well defended. And even then, you'll have to make sure you can play d5 safely without allowing some kind of knight jump to c5, or without just having the pawn be isolated and weak there. So, but if white cannot really advance the queenside pawns, it's hard to actually figure out a good plan, because you have to make moves. So, yeah, my opponent, he was still playing, like he wasn't playing, super quickly, but really not super slowly either. Like, he had started thinking a couple moves ago, and was now playing, at a relatively normal pace of 5 or 6 minutes a move. And yeah, here he thought for a little bit, he played rook f1, which is fine. And yeah, now I play bishop d7. So he comes up with a good plan here. He plays rook e5. So yeah, now, I had not really been thinking that much in the opening, because I'm pretty familiar with all these ideas. So at this point I had about a 15 to 20 minute time advantage. And yeah, he comes up with a good idea. He plays rook e5, and he wants to double. There's not really any sacrifices going on here. I mean, just even last move, sacrificing on f5 doesn't really do anything. If you take with the queen, I can easily play knight f8. And even if you play bishop takes f5, I think, yeah, like I can still just take that. And then if you take with a knight, then my queen comes out to g5, covering all the squares, and yeah, I mean, there's really no attack here for white. But rook e5 at least looks like, you know, maybe now there's one more piece that can contribute. And yeah, I mean, for that reason, I kind of just decided to force the issue a little bit here and play f6. And after this rook moves back, my idea would be to play knight g5 and just force a trade of rooks off. Yeah, one thing that I do know about this structure is that it's usually advantageous for black to trade off one set of rooks. And that's because, like, if we trade off all the sets of rooks, and we just have, like, queen and minor pieces left, then, I mean, that is getting closer to an endgame where maybe white can press a little bit. But if we just have one set of rooks on the board, that actually means, like, we can still use our rook for some counterplay on the queen side. Like, we can play a5, b5, and we can try to open up some files over here, use our one rook. And white's rook usually isn't really that useful. Like, the e file can be effectively shielded by these pieces, either knight on e6 or bishop on e6. But if white has both rooks on the board, then, like, that opens up more possibility for counterplay. Like, if this other rook gets to e1 and I don't do anything about it, then, you know, you can imagine a world where at some point white is able to play d5 or bishop c4 and then d5 and just uses overwhelming activity, and being doubled on the only open file, to actually make something happen. So yeah, I wanted to trade off rooks here, but a better way to do it would have been knight g7, which avoids this weakening move of f6. And the reason I didn't do this is, like, yeah, after rook e1, I mean, I saw I could do this, and taking with a pawn is not really a good idea, because this will just get easily blockaded anyway. So you take the rook. And I was just a little bit concerned about allowing, you know, white just this kind of dominant rook on the only open file. It looks like my rook is not really doing anything. But actually, after bishop e6, this is, like, still completely fine for black. We stop d5. Can't play c4 yet because d4 is hanging. Okay, we're hitting the a pawn. White will defend it. And this position is still equal. Like, we can bring the queen out, bring the rook in. This knight can regroup from, like, e8 to f6. Very good square again, covering all these important central points. And yeah, the position is just equal. Like, white has no way to make progress, really. And it's kind of funny, like, black can actually still improve his position. So even though white can't really do anything, black can still, like, make moves fairly quickly. And if you're playing white here, you will probably start thinking for a long time, trying to figure out what exactly you could be doing. So practically, it's a lot easier to play black in these kind of positions, which yeah, that's why I like this opening. So, but okay, yeah, this was kind of my first real think of the game. I played f6, which, I mean, it's not terrible, but definitely not best. Because, yeah, there's no real need to open up this diagonal. And now we don't really have a great support point on e6 for our minor pieces. So he comes back with e2, knight g5, trades rooks. And yeah, at this point, I just kind of decided, I'm anticipating he's going to play queen f4, and I decided after queen takes e8, queen f4, I'm going to play the queen b8 and just play this endgame straight up. Yeah, I thought if I take with a bishop, then after bishop c4 check, and then maybe something like queen e2, I thought this would be kind of a potentially dangerous initiative for white. Like, if he can get this other rook to e1 and kind of tie me up here, he can also play h4 at the right moment. When this knight would be short of squares. So something like this I did not really want to go into. But yeah, after queen takes e8, he played queen f4, queen b8, and we trade queens. So this is actually a very interesting endgame, and definitely the kind of position that I like quite a bit. So yeah, I was very happy to get it into this position. Now white is better here. The reason white is better is, like, we've gotten now to the point where white can, in the long run, try to do something like c4 and d5, or c4, c5, and then break with d5. White can try to make progress on the queen side, but he has to do it very, very delicately. The other thing white is going for him is that this move f6 is not really ideal, because now the e file becomes much more important, and, like, if you play rook e1, I have to make sure that you don't just invade to e7. And you also have this diagonal open for your bishop, which can be a little bit annoying too. So, with the pawn still on f7, it would just make black's life a lot easier. We just can put the bishop on e6, or the knight on e6, it shields the e file, and there's really nothing to worry about. But yeah, that being said, it's not easy for white to like make progress here. So, yeah, I mean, the next two moves are fine, so he plays h4. The other strange thing here is that my opponent started thinking, like, forever on every move here, which really confused me. Like, on h4, he spent 15 minutes here, which, I mean, we have 100 moves, or we have 100 minutes, yeah, 100 minutes for the whole game with a 30-second increment. So, I mean, after h4, he still had, like, 38 minutes left. He's not really in time pressure yet, but it was kind of strange to see him think for so long on these kind of, what to me looked like natural moves. So anyway, yeah, after h4, I mean, this just kind of motivated me to play faster, too. If he's going to play slowly, I want to capitalize on my time advantage. At this point, I still had over an hour on my clock, so I was definitely getting a big lead on the clock there. So it was hard to decide between knight e6 and knight f7. I decided to go to f7 so that I could go to d6, which is a really good central square. Gosh. Alright. Yeah, that was very annoying. So anyway, I wanted to go to f7 so I could head to this really nice central square. Alternatively, going to e6, I would probably end up being a little bit more passive there if I had to go to c7. And, I mean, white will play c4 in that case, and then by that point, make sure the d pawn is well covered, like rook d1. But yeah, from f7 on d6, like, I combined with this bishop to actually create some pressure on this diagonal. And against c4, one of the breaks that I oftentimes want to play is b5. And the knight is really well placed to take care of that. And also, in the event that white does play c4 and d5 and actually gets this pawn rolling, the knight on d6 is a perfect blockader. So, yeah. So, I mean, there really isn't like a big difference. Like, the engine evaluation doesn't really change that much, but these are just kind of the human considerations that were going through my head. And yeah, he kept surprising me here with his time management. So, like, he fought for another 6 minutes on rook d1, and I remember, like, I could not possibly figure out what he was thinking for so long about. I mean, you know, if I was playing white here, I would play, like, king f1 or rook d1. Both of those moves look very natural. You might also consider knight e2 to get this knight back into play. But, yeah, there's really nothing to calculate here. Like, this is just pure strategic chess. So, okay, rook d1, and, yeah, now I played knight d6, so finishing my plan. And, okay, now he started making moves a little bit faster, like b3. And I could consider b5, probably should consider it, but I didn't really think there was any rush. The point of b5 is now if white wants to play c4, he has to let me open up the b file. Actually, this rook being on b8 is actually very useful. So instead I played king f8, which is fine, and just getting my king one step closer to the center. And I mean, yeah, his time management here like surprised me again. He spent 8 minutes and played a very natural move, king f1, which is a natural move, but you don't have to spend 8 minutes on it. So, like at this point here, king f1, he's getting down to 20 minutes, and I still have like over an hour on my clock. So, you know, it seems like this endgame is not really something where, you know, it's hard to make moves. Like even if you get low on time, so you'd think you can still make moves pretty easily. But actually, things can get pretty complicated. Like we'll see later, things can definitely get very complicated. So I continue building bishop e6, and yeah, really like it's probably better to actually leave this bishop on d7 and instead play like c4 or play b5, because here, like if white ever wants to play c4, like now, yeah, like I said before, he's going to have to allow me to open up the b file. But even if I don't want to play b5, like let's say I play king e7, if white ever plays c4, having this bishop here is actually pretty helpful for playing b5. And then if white were to take, we could take back with a knight. And yeah, I mean, the bishop on d7 is already defending this pawn on c6 that can become weak. Here, white might consider move like rook c1. I mean, here the d pawn is hanging, so we play knight e2 probably. But like you can imagine, if we had this position with the bishop on e6 and the king still on f8, it's not really an improvement for black, but here it makes a lot of sense to just put the king on d6. This bishop is actually decent on d7. It defends this pawn, which is really black's only weakness. And, you know, I have a target on d4. Now later I can move over this bishop. Maybe I can play g5, just start to slowly make progress on the king side. So, yeah, probably good thing to be aware of for the future. But after bishop e6, knight e2, I played bishop f7. So I had a different idea in mind. I just wanted to kind of get prophylactically out of these knight f4 shots. And then later I was going to get my king over to d7. And now he really should play c4. Like he, for some reason, was very reluctant to play this move. And he just played b3, or he played f3. Not really sure. Maybe this was, he was spending a lot of time earlier trying to agonize over whether or not he should play c4, trying to figure this out. But yeah, I mean, c4 he should play here. Because now if I play b5, he can actually take this. And yeah, the problem is that I'm not really well positioned to defend this pawn on c6. Like if I take with a knight, white has already gotten this knight here, this pawn is defended, and rook c1 is going to make it quite awkward for me to guard this. Yeah, like it would be much better if the king was on d6 or the bishop on d7, so that I don't even have to lose a tempo here. And I mean, it's not like at the end of the world, white is only slightly better, but like otherwise black's task would be much easier if the king was already here. And obviously we can't take with a pawn, because then after rook c1 anyway, white is going to invade somewhere in the c file. This is not good. So yeah, after c4, like I would have actually played a5, and I remember I wasn't totally sure during the game, like if after a4, does this benefit white or not? Because yeah, he has this hole on b4, but my knight is never going to get there really. And later I thought maybe like he can engineer some kind of breakthrough with rook b1 and b4 to open up the b file, pressure my pawn on b7. But actually, like this is actually an ideal situation for black, because now we can play b5. And after this trade, we get rid of this weak c6 pawn. So now, like, opening up the position doesn't really hurt black at all. And it's funny, even though white can get this powerful pawn chain here, it can play d5 to shut this bishop in. Black can still take and just blockade these pawns. Like, we can play rook c8, attack this. After rook c1, threatening c5, we play knight b7. And this king is going to fit very nicely on d6. And look at this a pawn. Once we get king d6, knight c5, the rook comes to a8. We can actually start pushing this pawn forward. And it's unclear how white should make progress here. Like, it's a very, even if you get the knight to d4, I can play bishop e8. I can put the bishop on d7 to cover all your squares from your knight. So, I mean, the engine thinks this is equal, so it's clearly still balanced, complex position. But yeah, definitely, like, this kind of situation is still playable for black. So, yeah. So instead, yeah, he played f3, which is not really a great move because it just weakens squares unnecessarily. Like, I mean, yes, I'm not going to play knight e4 anymore, but that's not really the most important thing in the position there. So, okay, so yeah, now I played a5. I felt like it's time for me to actually start doing something. I've spent a lot of time reorganizing my pieces, so now let me start throwing this a pawn forward and just to create a little bit of a decision here for white. I can play a4 and then put the rook on the a file, and it's actually could be black who gets the initiative on the queen side here. So, yeah, so I had thought for like a little while here, and I was mostly considering if he now plays c4, what I would do here. Like I could still play b5, and the point is that now after takes, if white tries to get the c file, like now I'm in time for counterplay here. I play a4 right away, and white doesn't really have time to attack anything with his rook, because I'm already making threats here. But actually what I was thinking for a long time about was, after c4, can I play even more ambitiously a4? Because if he takes on a4, I take on c4. And otherwise I'm going to take here and put the rook on a8 and be very happy. But yeah, what you could play is c5. And if my knight moves away, then white can probably just take on a4 and be pretty happy. But actually, I was thinking, can I sacrifice a piece here when a takes b3? And yeah, if white takes, I take here. It's actually good to point out that if white tries to do this, this doesn't work, because I can actually just take it. After rook b1, I play bishop c4. So this I had seen from far away. But yeah, what I couldn't really evaluate was this position. After takes on a2, like king e1. Let's say rook a8, rook a1. I have two pawns for a piece, and I have this really powerful a2 pawn, and this b pawn obviously can come running up the board later. I mean, yeah, I'm going to win the d6 pawn, and then I'll have three pawns for a piece actually. So I really could not evaluate this position. Like a2 pawn is either really strong or it's overextended. Like you can imagine a world very easily where white just brings the king over, brings the knight over, and it just takes it. And even if I do play like b5, b4, b3, even there, like the b pawn could be attacked. King and b2, knight and c1, and you know, these pawns are pretty well blockaded. So the engine, of course, just says 0, 0, 0 here, which means probably my evaluation here was correct. I just thought this was unclear. But yeah, probably like white is risking more here because like it's actually very easy for black to just play king e8 and then slowly take this, and this d pawn can be targeted like rook a4, and b5. Like just for example, I saw a position like this, like king d2, king d7. This is what I probably would have played had we gotten to this. King c2 and then take on d6, and then knight c1. And yeah, the engine actually at this point even slightly prefers black. To b5, king b2. It puts the rook on a4, and yeah, we don't really mind losing this pawn if we're going to take on d4. And you know, black can continue making progress. We're going to king c3. We can play this, move c5, and just bring the king one step closer. Take stakes, and you know, check king b6. This kind of position, white is really badly tied up. Like this rook is actually perfectly placed on a4. It's attacking the stage 4 pawn. This rook cannot move because then we would take on b3 and play and promote. So yeah, like at this point, actually, black, the engine slightly prefers black, which I can agree with at this point. Yeah, it was kind of hard to anticipate all of this from like, all the way back in this position. So this is like, I was thinking about this as I played a5. And he turned out not to do any of this anyway, so he played bishop c2. So yeah, I mean, I didn't think too long on this. I only spent 8 minutes. I still have like plenty of time left, but yeah, definitely it's good to keep in mind you don't want to spend a long time calculating a long variation, and then your opponent just plays something totally different. So he basically wasted all our time. And yeah, had he played c4, like I probably would have then spent a little more time really considering this a4 move. Or yeah, I guess there is the backup option of b5. So having known that, like I knew this backup option existed, that made my decision a little bit easier. So it actually surprised me. He played bishop c2, which I actually totally missed what his idea was. I thought this move didn't make a lot of sense because I play a4 anyway. And now at any moment I can play rook a8 and then just threaten to open up the a file, and you can't really defend my entry points on either a3 or a2. So yeah, I played a4 fairly quickly. But yeah, then he showed me his point. He plays d5, which I thought it was a pretty strong move. Yeah, I can't take with the bishop. After c4, I'm going to have to sacrifice a piece. And I did actually consider doing this. I'll just kind of try to get some kind of similar position to before, where I have this connected passed pawns on the queen side. But yeah, this is just bad. He takes this. If I take this, these pawns are not dangerous at all. This rook can come into d7. So yeah, I mean, white's basically winning here, probably. Or close to winning. So yeah, and I didn't want to just allow d takes c6, like if I play king e7, for example, and white does this, and then takes on a4, allowing me to take on a2. I thought something like this might favor white. Or, no, actually, hold on first, on knight d4. With this guy. Then for b6, yeah, this is what I was thinking. Then b takes a4, and then take on a2. Yeah, I felt this kind of position would favor white, because now he's kind of achieved something. He has this outside pass pawn, the rook is going to a1, and he can start pushing it. And yeah, I mean, the engine doesn't really think black is in huge trouble here, but it mostly agrees with that assessment. It thinks white is slightly better. So yeah, in the end, I just decided to take on b3. Takes back, and then I played c5, which I kind of did so with a heavy heart, but I kind of underestimated how much, or I overestimated the strength of this pawn in d5. Like it looks like after c4, white is going to get this really dominant protected passed pawn in d5, and that, like, surely is what white must have been wanting to do the whole game, right? He finally got his protected passed pawn. Pretty much any king and pawn endgame, like, black will not be able to win, or white will win, unless black can set up some kind of fortress. So yeah, I mean, it seems like this is a dream scenario for white, but it's actually not so easy. So he plays rook a1, which is a very good move, covering the a file. And now I play king e7. So yeah, so we got this c4, and I play b5, so just so that at least I can trade this off and keep a target on c4. And at this point here, this is where probably time pressure started to play a little bit of a role in his decisions, because he was making moves like fairly quickly here, and I think he played rook a7 check a little bit too quickly, not really anticipating my reply. So I think here what I was worried about was bishop d3, and the engine is not really concerned. Like, the point is that after this, he's going to take with a bishop, keep his pawn on b3, keep my rook out of play, and now rook a7 check is going to be coming in, and like, I'm not really going to be able to keep his rook out, or rook a5 to attack this pawn. So, like, just for example, I'm going to play rook b4, but then rook a7 check. And if I bring the rook back, then he'll play rook a5. In the game, he played rook a7 check right away, and because I have this threat on c4, I can play rook b7, which I did. And now he has to trade rooks, because I'm threatening to win a pawn here. So we got this endgame pretty much by force. And yeah, I mean, this is of course equal, like this should be a draw. But it's actually surprisingly tricky, like the resources that are still available here. So, yeah, first things first, he plays knight c3, forcing me to release the tension here. I don't really want to play b4, because even though it's going to close up the queen side, and like this will not give his king a route to enter my position at all. But then I don't have a target. Like, the only thing I can attack is this pawn on b3 with my knight, but that's easy to defend with this bishop. If I take this way, at least this bishop can one day, like, use this diagonal. It can get around to a6 and attack this pawn. Knight on d6 can attack this pawn. My king would be able to attack this pawn on d4. So this just moves white's pawns closer to my pieces. So, yeah, and then here I played f4, which, yeah, definitely the most ambitious move. Yeah, I thought if I don't do that, like if I play knight a5, and I'll just try to bring my king in. Obviously, he's not going to let me play king e5, he's going to play f4. And this is really a dead draw. Like, I mean, I'll have to play bishop e8, probably to cover these squares, but really white cannot make progress here. But neither can black. Like, I can't invade my king anywhere. I can't move any pawns on the king side. Even if I was able to play g5, I would just play g3 and ignore me. So, because I'm trying to win the game, I didn't really want to do this. So yeah, I played f4. And in case of knight e2, I was going to play knight d6 to first hit this pawn, after bishop d3, then play g5. So if he wants to take on h7, I'll take on c4. I was happy to make that trade. And it's all still equal. Like, really, no side should be losing this position if we both play well. So instead he played knight e4, and now I play bishop e8, so I'm planning this, bishop d7 and bishop f5. And yeah, now, I said earlier, like, it seems like this is the kind of position where it doesn't really matter if you don't have a lot of time, because it's easy to make moves with white, and easy enough to make moves with black too, there's just not that much going on. But he actually here makes, not the losing move, but he starts going down the wrong path. He plays a very impulsive move, h5, which I can kind of understand why he played it, like he wants to open up the bishop, and it looks like taking this pawn is ridiculous, because my pawn structure is going to be totally shattered here. But at the same time, I don't want to allow this. I mean, I could, but I probably don't want to allow h6. That's really like his main problem, because then this pawn will be hard to get to. I'll always have to worry about sacrifices on g6 or my h7 pawn being weak. So like if I play g5, then h6 is actually very strong here. This knight can move away, and then h7 is always going to be a big target. But it's actually bad, because I take on h5. So I realized here that, and this is actually a very common way to react to this kind of a pawn advance, is you can just take it. And the point is that later you're going to do the same thing to your opponent. You're going to play h4, h3, forcing white to take back. And you'll basically return the pawn, but in the process you'll weaken your opponent's structure. So that's going to happen like a long way away. It took like another 15 moves until I actually did that. But yeah, by that point I was actually like close to winning. Now at this point, like here, black is better now. I mean, it's not winning, shouldn't be winning, but white has to take extra care here. And because now he's getting down to like under 10 minutes, actually close to 5 minutes. He really doesn't have a lot of time to think about the position. And I think here he makes maybe not the losing move, but like practically the losing move, king e2, because it allows bishop g6. Now I'm going to get to trade off my bishop for the knight, and the resulting endgame is going to be total torture for white, because I have this excellent knight that can always blockade here. My king is going to get into e5, white is going to have absolutely no way of making any progress, and really only black can play for a win there. Actually, I wasn't sure during the game how he should defend. The engine finds a very clever way of guarding with knight f2, and my plan here was to play bishop g6 for this trade. And then the engine actually finds this really brilliant maneuver, bishop e4, and then after knight d6, put the bishop on d3, guarding this pawn. It's not really good to play bishop d3 here, because now after king d6, this king is going to get into e5 and probably into d4. And you never really want to make this exchange, because that's going to help fix black's pawn structure. Yeah, this I didn't anticipate. This would be hard to figure out during the game, especially if you don't have a lot of time. But yeah, bishop e4, knight d6, then put the bishop back on d3, because now black cannot use the d6 square for his king. And yeah, we can get this position, like after takes, and then knight takes c4, and then king g1 is a nice move, so this king actually comes up here to not allow h4, h3. And yeah, after knight takes d5, even though black has up 2 pawns, this should be a pretty simple draw. Like, the king goes to h2, these pawns are doubled and isolated, and really, white should have no problem holding this. So, that's what he should have played. Yeah, so after king e2, now bishop g6. Like, this is where I started getting really optimistic. Now, I mean, it might still be holdable, but now he has to play like even more accurately, which, with limited time on the clock, this kind of position takes, and then just h6. I think practically black wins like 95% of the time here, probably, just because, or at least 90% of the time. It's just so hard to play for white, given the time situation too. So he has 3 minutes at this point. He has no plan, and I can improve my position at will. Like, I can go here, here, knight d6. I can jump around wherever I want with this knight to try and see if he'll blunder something. Like, I can try to get the knight to h4, just to make sure not to allow that. I can try to remaneuver my pieces, get my knight to g5, to d6, to, a5, b4, whatever. And every time I force him to make a little decision, even if it only takes him like 15 or 30 seconds to figure it out, he only has 3 minutes left. So even with a 30-second increment, not a lot of time to play this position. So yeah, here I was feeling like probably black should be, maybe not objectively winning, but practically winning here. And yeah, he had to take the bishop, because he takes the pawn to try and get his king up here. This doesn't really work, because my king can just go to e5. And even after g3, I take, I saw this position that I could pick in d4, let him take on e4, and let him take my h5 pawn, taking h4. I'll play knight d6 and then bring the knight back to f7 just in time to stop king h6. And from far away, I wasn't really sure if black is winning here. The engine will confirm black is completely winning here. But yeah, basically white is totally paralyzed. Like, I'll very slowly prepare king f4, and play f5. This king will be totally boxed in. This pawn is going nowhere. Slowly, like, black can even use zugzwang to get the king to a better square, force this bishop to move off the diagonal. And eventually, once this pawn gets stopped to f4 and then to f3, like, it should be winning for black. So, yeah, so we did take with the bishop, and we got this position, so h6. And yeah, now, I mean, it's important that if he decides to walk over here with his king and try to target my pawns, now, I saw this, I can play h4, also, by the way, stopping g3. And yeah, in case of king g1, knight d6, king h2, actually, that hangs the pawn, yeah, so this comes with the tempo, yes, play bishop d3, and f7, yeah, king h2, yeah, and this is what I saw, knight g5. I'm just in time to stop this, and now his king will have to just rush back here anyway, because I can start invading like that. At any moment, I can play h3 to seal this up, and make a target out of this f3 pawn. So, yeah, this does not accomplish anything for white. So he plays bishop d3, just kind of waits around, h4, king d2, king d6, king e5. Yeah, and he can't really keep going this way, trying to invade with his king, because yeah, this I also calculated. After knight d6 and king d4, black is just faster. King d3, I'm getting the g2 pawn, and whatever you try to do, even if you try to sacrifice your bishop, like this knight comes back to f7, it's easy to stop this pawn. It's going to take forever for this king to stop, or to get rid of the knight. And I'm taking on g2 and queening in just 4 more moves. And yeah, also if you play bishop d3, then I take in g2, and this pawn is unstoppable, like way faster than any of your counterplay here. So yeah, so you can't do that. So he keeps waiting, bishop d2. Yeah, now I decided to get my knight over to g5 so that I can play h3. So knight d6, bishop d3, knight f7, plays bishop f1, play knight g5. And it doesn't really matter that his bishop is on f1 because he can still play h3. And the only way you can take it is with a pawn. It's still gonna, even if like I can't take on f3 right away, f3 and h2 will both be permanent weaknesses. Really, the ideal place for this bishop would be on this diagonal, but he was never able to do that. So like, you know, once his bishop got to this diagonal, I made sure to have the score covered. So yeah, now here finally I played h3. So now, yeah, I mean at this point he could have considered bishop e2 instead, so at least like I wouldn't be able to take this pawn. But now I can anyway play h3, and then I'm going to take this one. And then either way I get a dangerous passed pawn. So there really was nothing he could do. So d3, h3, I take on f3. And yeah, at this point I felt like black was winning. The engine, yeah, mostly agrees. Like I don't think white can defend this even with perfect play. And yeah, he plays bishop e2. And yeah, here I was moving quickly, like just played knight d4, which doesn't really spoil anything, but I can't really believe I missed this simple move, knight h2, which I admit I didn't look at it at all during the game, but this would basically like end the game right away. Because now I'm threatening f3 and then f2, which just wins. And if you try bishop d1, I play f3 anyway. This is not really that hard to calculate. After king e3, I play knight f1 check. And the whole point is that if you take, I play knight d2 check. Even if you go here, I play knight d2, and there's no way to save the c4 pawn. Once I get rid of c4, I'll win d5 later, and that should be an elementary win for black. So yeah, something about knight h2 and then knight f1, I have a bit of a blind spot for that. So okay, I went back to d4. And yeah, instead I just maneuvered around. f3, knight a5. You can see it's just going back and forth. I get my knight back to d6. King f5. And yeah, this is actually like a bit of a psychological moment, because he had just been going back and forth with his bishop. And instead of playing the automatic knight d6, I just played king f5. So that now he has to think, like if he plays bishop g4 check, you know, does he want to allow king g5 or not? And while thinking about that, cost him another minute. So at this point he's now down to just 1 minute left, and instead he played h4, which it does stop me from getting over here, but it also makes this pawn an extra target. So my knight on f5 will be able to attack it pretty easily, and it's hard to defend. So okay, knight d6, bishop f3, and eventually here I started making actual progress. So knight f7, I'm going to play knight e5 check, force your pieces back. You know, you're going to have to. Knight e5 check is a threat right now because you have to guard the bishop and the pawn, and you can't play bishop g4 check because I anyway invade here. And yeah, this pawn is not dangerous at all because this knight can always come back to d6. So plays bishop e2, knight e5, and then I get my king to e4, and I just slowly start making progress. So king f1, king f, or bishop f1, king f3, bishop e2 check, king g2, king e1, and yeah, at this point I had total control over the position, and probably a safer approach to what I did during the game, because I actually gave him like an incredible chance to make a comeback later on, which is unbelievable. But yeah, here like the safest thing to do would just be to make sure this pawn is blockaded. And for bishop f1, then I could play what I did in the game, attack this pawn, and I'm just going to make sure this is totally secure. I'm still attacking the pawn in c4, and the way black is going to win is by eventually getting this king up to g1. So like after bishop e2, like white is actually lacking moves here. I guess you could play bishop e3 also, but like just to illustrate, after bishop e2, f3, and then bishop d3. Now black, even in this situation, will get the king to g1, and after f2, it's going to force white to give away the c4 pawn to stop this from queening. So that is like the way black should win, and white has no counterplay at all. Yeah, instead I played king g3, and at this point, like, I still had 6 minutes left, and I fought for half of my time here. King g3 doesn't spoil anything. After h5, I wasn't really continuing with the right plan. Okay, I continued with f3. But yeah, really this knight should be on d6. After bishop f1, I played king g4, thinking I could just easily win this pawn. But now he plays d6, and I realize it's not really sensible. Because if I take on h5, he plays king f2, and then I can't really stop this king from getting in. He can play king e3 or king g3. Still should be winning for black, but I didn't want to allow that. So I actually changed my mind here, played king g3. And after I played it, I realized this is a pretty tricky zigzag, because this bishop has no moves, that you literally have to move the king. That allows king f2, which is obviously very undesirable. So yeah, he played king d2, which is the only move. Like, if you go here, then your bishop is actually like trapped. Although, yeah, I may not actually be able to take it if he goes to d3, but yeah, either way, he went to d2. Now king f2, bishop d3, and it looks like both of these moves should be winning, just because we're going to promote. But yeah, there actually is a difference here. So I remember thinking there was no difference between king g2 and king g1, and I just played king g1 very quickly, which happens not to be the best way. It's still winning, but king g2 is just very straightforward. Like, this would not be hard to calculate. I did not have a whole lot of time at this point, so yeah, maybe it wasn't super easy to make this decision. But yeah, the point is, after king e3, we're going to take on d3. This happened in the game, but he had, but with my king on g1, like, yeah, what happened in the game was I played king g1. Then after king e3, I wasn't able to take on d3, because he would take on f3. But after king g2, and king e3, I take on d3. Now, he has to play d7, otherwise I'm going to queen with check. So if you take the knight, I queen with check. Yeah. And then we'll both queen, but I'm going to be up a knight and a pawn here. You can't trade queens, because then the king and pawn endgame is an easy one. And, I mean, there's a couple checks, like, you can calculate this, and I go here, and there's one more check. After f5, there's no more checks. So, yeah, I mean, this is an easy one for black. You can't even take this pawn, because of queen h6 check. You lose the queen. So, this really wouldn't have been that hard to calculate. But yeah, instead I played king g1, not thinking there was a big difference. But actually after king e3, I realized here, like, yeah, I can't take on d3, because you'll take on f3 then. And I'm still winning here. I think, like, I have to just admit my mistake and play king g2 and go back. But instead I played f2, which, believe it or not, actually throws away the win. This is incredible. He didn't find it, but, like, he should play king e4 here. I think he forgot that I was threatening to take this bishop. So he played king e4, thinking he's going to get counterplay. Then after I took on d3, now this is an easy win. Because after d7, f1, we get this endgame. It's an even better version for me, because it's my move, and he doesn't check anyway. So this is an easy win. But yeah, actually, amazingly, I realized this right after I made my move, of course, that plays bishop e2, stopping knight takes d3. And this is not clear at all. After f1, takes, and king e4, white, it turns out, has enough counterplay to draw here. Like, it's still not super easy. But yeah, this king being so active, I kind of assumed that white was not losing anymore, which was correct. So yeah, definitely should not have allowed that, but yeah, anyway, as it was, he played king e4, and knight takes d3. Now finally, this game is over, so play f1, promote, he promotes, and the game only lasted a few more moves. So check, check, all his pawns, knight e5 check, can't take on c5 because of knight f7 check. Yeah, queen g4, not giving him any checks, so they're covering the d1 square. I'm going to take this. Obviously, even if I have to sacrifice the knight to trade queens and take this pawn, I'll do it. And here I was able to force a queen trade, queen b4 check, queen a4 check. After king b7, he resigned without waiting for queen c6, which would force the queens off. So yeah, definitely not a clean game. I mean, it was mostly clean up until like that very last moment where I gave him this chance to draw. But yeah, definitely this kind of confirms my beliefs in this opening. Like, this kind of structure is, you can play it as a win for black. Like, it's not like your Caro-Kann has a reputation as being a very solid opening, but I've gotten a lot of wins against lower-rated players with it. So you can oftentimes get a lot of fighting positions like this, and even in other lanes that I play, I also tend to get a lot of fighting positions. So, alright, so that'll do it for this round, and I'll be back for round 4.